All right, so today I'm gonna try, and I'm not gonna try. Today I'm going to make, not today either. At this moment I'm making the plugs for the door switches. What I did is I ran out and I was actually looking for these guys, these caps in my original door hinges that I purchased online. Okay, but they weren't those caps. It was a whole interior cap. And then I found these, and I do like the kind of the brushed silver look, or the silver look, better than the chrome look. I don't want a bunch of chrome on it, but I mean, you know, it's a dog a piece. Anyway, these are going to be retained just like I was going to do in here. You know, just hold them in the, in that case, in that position. These will be held in this position. But where these had 3 mounting ears and a significant amount of depth, these have less depth and 4 mounting ears. Another thing is the elevation on the mounting ears changes on these. The elevation on the mounting ears is the same on these, which makes it nice when you're trying to construct a flat panel. The manner in which they latch is the same. We've got a right and left side, but they're cable operated. And they're actually from the same vehicle. These are a Murano or Altima or a Pathfinder. They used them across the board in the years 2017 and newer. This was a 27 or 2009, something like that. And they're a little shorter, which I like. And it gives me more room for the switch on the rear doors. Or on the front doors, pardon me. So what I did is I grabbed those along with the door cards, and I cut out that area of the door cards, and then I trimmed it down to a smaller and smaller and smaller area. See, the door cards, they have a radius to them. On the back I trimmed off all the stiffeners for that radius, and the game plan, okay, is to secure that down and get that profile. Yeah, I know it's textured. We'll address that. And get that profile, which is a really cool profile, but into the panel. So I made a paper pattern for one door. The switch is going to be ahead of just ahead of this, and still integrate well into the door. I have one switch or one handle hung on here, and they'll essentially go there, and the switch will go right there, or the window switch will go right there. So now what I'm playing with is a theory. So I got a piece of plywood. I got the shape roughed out on the plywood. I just scratched it with my pencil. I'm going to locate this and then relieve the plywood and sink that guy in, and that'll be, and flush it with the surface, screw it down, and attempt to cover up the screws and all that kind of a thing to make a plug. My thoughts are racing because I don't know if this is going to work. But if I can get that down flush with the door, when I make the mold, this will just be the plug. When I make the mold, pardon me, I'll make the mold out of plaster of Paris, Okay, and before I go in to make the piece, I will lightly sand this whole mold and get those surfaces out, that texture out of the surface. So that's the plan right now, subject to change because I'm still thinking it through. On the interior panel side, here's what I got going. So I trimmed this all out, marked the location of the, I don't have it sitting here, but you know, those aftermarket door holders, but identified it in the door, marked it, and then cut it out to fit the channel, because the channel recesses in to that piece, which I like, which is nice. Let me get a switch here. So the switch won't sit on the surface, it'll sit into the surface like this. Okay, and then it'll snap in behind it. Now I kept this surface a little bit tight. I got the switch in crooked so I can, okay, you got a little here and a little there, and let me just get the switch in straight. Okay, there. Now you can see the corners in that need a little more radius. Not a big deal, probably insignificant. And then I measured the thickness of the snap piece, the plastic piece, and I took a piece of metal as close to it as possible. This in this case would be 14 gauge. And this guy then will snap over the switch. The switch will latch onto it. So when I come to install, okay, I'll put the switch in, probably just hot melt glue that on. Then I'm going to, remember this is contoured, I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to come in here with a router and route a step 100 thousandths thick, because that's what this is 100 thousandths thick ABS. So I'll route around that line, you know, try to stay as close as I can to that line, and then clear out the middle of it, and this will drop right in, right? I can sharpen the line up if I want and all that, but it doesn't matter because I'll have to come and fill it in. Okay, so then that'll have the profile. Again, I'm building the door side, or the plug, which is a simulation of the door, not the mold. And then when I get to the mold, I can cut a piece of wood that fits in here, sand it until it fits in there, and sticks up. And so when you get the mold, of course, you'll have this impression. This will be the mold now. You know, none of this will be there, but it'll have these steps in it. And then I'll put a plug in here. Okay, and that plug then will allow me to fiberglass around, and it'll leave that hole there to those dimensions. That's what I'm thinking anyway. So after kind of sketching out and getting confidence, basically coming up with a plan, and finally confident that I can make this happen, I think I'm going to reposition this on here in a different location and have one panel capable of making the front or the rear side. Make two plugs instead of 4. So I'm going to set up now and using this as a template, measure out where the switch is in the rear doors, because in the rear doors the switch is behind the handle right there, and I got real estate right there. Again, I think you remember that I was aiming for the hole. That switch is, the bolt was loosened to work around it, but the way the handle's gonna go, it's gonna be right there. I expose that. I'm not going into the hole, but I'm getting close to the surface, and the switch is going to be about close to center, but not dead on center. But then everything will set into the fiberglass you know, you know, the interior door panel. So I'm going to set up for that. Try to make a double plug. Of course, one side I can just cover the hole for the door switch while I build out the other side, or conversely, it's out here. I just don't fiberglass all the way out to there because, again, this is a flat piece in a trim panel. So when I do the back door, I just have to get my dimensions correct, my barriers correct. So hard to explain, but you will see. Okay, getting better with each step now, because you always want to look for the simplest possible route. Okay, so what do we got going on? I relayed it out. This is the original. This is the end for the left side. This is the switch for the left side. This is the panel for the right side. And as it turns out, the handle is in the same location. Okay, no matter what. This is the end of that panel when it goes on the rear door, and I just cut out the switch. So again, just a little bit tight, but fits. Okay, so when I finish it out in glass on the final stage, I can lightly sand. I plan on gel coating these surfaces because they're going to be finished to a paint surface. And then on this side, then I'm going to grab the paper template. The irony of it all is that the panel ends here, so I don't have to fiddle fart around with anything. So I just lay it up to this end, right? I lay it up to here, maybe just put a block right here, glass this side out, and then I'll trim. I'll trim it when I'm done. I left it, I went back about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, whatever. I just moved it back a little bit. So everything will trim to fit on the panel. Then when I do the rear, I don't know where, you know, relatively speaking, it should be, oh, it's 1/2 of an inch from the end, yeah. And I went another 1/4 when I moved the paper. So that's 3/4 to the end. That's where the panel is. And the switch, I think I missed the switch because there's the edge of the door. I didn't look at that. So I'll miss the switch. So in both cases, I can just block here, lay that panel out, block here, lay that panel out. So now I'll copy that. That's luck, you know, but now I'll copy that in, I'll cut this out, run it in the table saw, and then I have to dig out, I have to router down this area, 100 thou, bury that into it, cut that one out to a similar final shape as that, including that, and bury it in this. So when I cut this out, I'll flip, after I cut out the opening to fit the vinyl in, or the plastic, the ABS in, I'll get it to routed down, I'll flip it over, copy it, cut the hole in that one, and then router it out. Hopefully that makes sense. It kind of does to me. It kind of does. So then I'll have everything in 4 layups, but I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time I go and do it. Okay, I've trimmed the boards, routed out a channel by hand. Oh my. Anyway, got everything laid in. And so now again, this is going to cut off here for the front. It's going to cut off, I don't remember, pretty close to here for the back. If not, I got to put a plug in it. But it ends here on the rear, and it ends here on the front, give or take about 3/4 of an inch. I put a ledge in. Okay, that's the top. This is only going to be a couple layers, maybe 3 at the most. I don't want it very thick. I just want it to retain. I took those pieces then. I ran it just a chamfer bit in, and I used washers to stack them up flush with the ends here, so that I have minimum amount of work to do. This corner, that, for example, is lipped up just a little bit, not a big deal, as is this corner right here. I tried to screw it right there, but there's nothing underneath it. So what I'll do now is I'll get this filled in. I'm going to fill this in with epoxy or hot melt or something where I can come in and just sand it in the morning. I've never sanded hot melt, so I don't know if it will sand. But I need something to retain this area right here. The curve was this way, and it's pushing it out really nicely, nice and flat, into the router channel. So that's good. All of these others where I've screwed it down to the board underneath, I'm just establishing flat. So I've got it bridged right here to in right there. You can see the one right there on both sides. So now it's just a matter of dressing it to get it prepared for the mold. And we'll move on from there. If the mold, if I need to plug these, I'll just make a plug for them. I'm using gel coat on the final product. I probably use gel coat on the mold too, because that's the only effective way to get a piece out of a mold. So and maybe even just do a plaster mold. I don't know. I may clear this out so that I can under tape in here, because I don't need anything below that. I don't care if it sags. I just want it secure under there. But it's not straight. It dips up, so it runs around this handle, but it comes up. Even though this is straight, it comes up here and is higher, and then it drops down over here in the, oh, there you can see it. You can get a good view of it right there. Okay, so he comes up and then drops down on both sides. So taping it from the bottom side might be the most effective way to do it. But anyway, it's going fine. It's going spectacular, and we'll just keep plugging away at it. Hey guys, you can see, okay, you can see here what I'm doing. So this is a low spot. I just basically have 60 grit plugged up on the DA, and I'm just going around and melting out, trying to hold it to the surface and melting out, spreading, if you will, the glue, and taking off any of the high spots on here so I'm flush with the surface. Now, I certainly have cleanup to do, but I can come in here and sand it and go from there. So what's basically going on is I just need to establish a shape, right? That's all I'm doing is establishing a shape. It doesn't have to last for 20 years. It doesn't have to last for 20 days. I just need to get a shape on here so that I can make a mold. And so whatever I wind up using, I can use mud on here. And if the mud, even with release agent and that, and the mud comes off the surface because mud doesn't stick to vinyl or plastic very well, so be it. Big deal. I'll pop it out of the mold, once I wash it. So long as I can have a very nice surface to begin. So that's what I'm doing. I am setting this down, then I'll block it out. I eventually want to cover up all of the texture on here. When I'm done with that, then I'll cut out 2 plugs that'll be 100 thou beneath this surface. Just use a caliper after I finish it out. Stick the plug, 100 thou below the surface because that's what I need to achieve my recess switch and the bottom where it clicks in. This for the door handles. I was thinking I can slip underneath and all that, but I just basically need to get that profile. I can copy that off of a door handle, stick it in, and then I can just finger some silicone or caulk or whatever in there so that I don't have any seepage on through, and that I get a nice perfect mold. So again, after that, this can get thrown in the garbage, so that's what I'm working on, and we're going from there. You can see this one is shifted a little. I didn't measure these. I knew I allowed for a 1/2 inch, but this one's a little farther that way than that one. As you look at the door switches for the right and left, for the front and back side. No big deal. This rib, there's the elevation of the material, right? Couple layers, and that's all that is. So at this point now, I'm going to continue to finish it out. I got some boogers in here and all that because this is an old piece of wood, but I plan on blocking across here to make a nice surface on both sides, and then go from there. So okay, so now we can see the sanding. I think I talked a little bit about that, but what I did here now is I just took a 2x4. I measured this distance just using a caliper, and this distance and this distance down. In this case, is 95 thou, 95 from the surface down. 95.7, 95.2, 95, whatever. But 100 thousandths and somewhere in the neighborhood, or at least in the zip code, is good. It gives me that look. So at this point, then I just shove these down into there, tap them down into there. I'm going to glue them and nail them in. So let's get started. just pulled everything out, so I didn't actually prepare anything here. Just got to thinking this would be a good thing to YouTube, so I got to grab a channel lock to open that guy up. And basically, all I'm trying to do is hold this on. I'm not looking for long range furniture making here. Just trying to get a plug for mold, right? This guy looks to be just a little tight. He'll go. Oh, yes. I don't want to mar the surface too much as I tap it down. That looks to be a little thick. If I can find a piece of 3/4 here, or something just a little skinnier, just to get her down beneath the surface. Perfect. We'll throw a couple in. A little more gentle on this side because I don't have the, 1/2 inch of wood going down. I just have the thickness of the plastic here. There we go. Okay, and then we have that. Okay, now I have to make the inserts for here and here, and then start sanding that piece off. I haven't started these, so I will do that. Just basically cutting them out of something, right? Even if it's 2 halves or whatever it is, to get in there and get underneath that surface. I gotta take a look at it, think it through. But right now we have the step. Maybe I should get you in there. So now that's 100 thou deep, and on both sides you can see the plastic on this side, and just the depth of that plastic, which is what I was looking for because it was 100 thousandths on that aftermarket plastic piece that had the insert that came with the switches. So that I'm just looking for that elevation so the switch is flush, and I'll cut the hole on this stepped piece. I can just use a oscillating tool or whatever and just cut that hole for that's what the switch snaps into as I come back on it during assembly. And again, everything really flushed out nice. Of course, there's going to be a skim coat on here that'll achieve some build, all kinds of things. When I roll out the fiberglass and start to lay in the gel coat, probably the gel coat first in the mold. you know, if I get a little seepage through here, when I pull the whole thing off, I'll see little tiny flags that I can just very quickly take some 180, work it up, you know, work it up to a smooth, to a 600 or something like that before I wax it, and clean everything up. You know, I can radius these just a little bit in the mold, and you know, achieve the kind of the results that I'm looking for. But I'll go look for something to use to make that work, and we'll get back with you. Okay, so what I did is I just took so this is all 1/2 inch, and this is 3/8. It's, can you see that? Okay, so this is all 1/2 inch plywood. Grab the piece of scrap 3/8 now, and I measured a little excess because I can get in behind on this side and I can get under this side. This side is closer to the wood than this side, so it's got to be up at a little bit of an angle. I can't get one piece in there, and you know, your person always thinks, well, hindsight, well, then unscrew it from the board and come in from the bottom. But I nailed the risers that are on here, or screwed the risers that are on here. These I screwed through the riser. These I screwed on first. This block in here and block in here, just to hold that surface flat. And I, you know, if I did it again, would I provide access up here? I still have to cover it all. So the long and the short of it is, I'm making a mold, or a plug, the disposable part to get to the mold. I'm just trying to get a shape established. I'm not overly concerned about that, because if I were able to take it apart and then do, you know, tape this off and use another method to beef up the bottom so that I could lay fiberglass into it, you know, maybe I would. On the other hand, I'm not going to spend the time trying to make it disassemblable, to screw it all together, to cover up the screws so that I can make the mold and then throw it away. I'm going to continue going with what I have. So I took a piece. In this case, it's like 4 5/8 long. It's too big for the hole. And because I have a radius shape, I need to be able to get in under there, and I'd like to cover up any means of my ability to enter the piece in from this hole, and in this case, slide it forward. So I just put it in, made a pen mark, I could clear there, cut that, and then I just wound up tapering. You're just running through the saw and cleaning up as much material here. I'll need to support it on the bottom anyway, whether it be hot melt glue or whatever, to get it up to follow the surface on the inside. I flipped it over, marked the second piece, and did the same thing, just making a mirror image. So in this case, I stick it in underneath, drop it down, and then slide it forward. Because I have access underneath, I can slide it forward. But in this case, I'm going to pull it all the way. I guess I'm going to go all the way to the back, and then slide it in. I'll give you a kind of a look at it, and get it in so that it's flush with the edge. Now this does tip up a little bit, you know, around 100 thou. It comes up for the relief for the hinge, where I showed in an earlier video that it's not a perfectly flat plane. But in this case, again, the same thing, a little bit of wiggle. He's down in there. I slide him forward if I need. Oh, I got to lift it up, because that's why I had to cut that taper in there. And of course, I'm holding the tripod here. Let me set that down. Get it in. Should go. Lift it up. And, oh, there he goes. And slide him forward. Get him underneath. Now I'll get some wedges. Some sort of wedging, whatever in there. I'll cut another smaller piece. I got access back underneath here, this a little bit, not a lot, but I can get enough slop in there where I can get the two pieces in, slide them together. I'll have the seam right there. Again, no big deal, because I sand that all through. So That'll finish out then the plug, and then I just start the process of smoothing out the surface and getting it to look the way I want it to look to build the mold from. So we'll keep but plugging away. Okay, so the two pieces of plywood, you can see the seam here and here, stuck in, made, used the wooden shim and made a few wedges and just lifted it up until it came in contact with the bottom. In this gap, I did run hot melt glue, so I'll take an X-Acto knife, razor blade. I do have this set of spatulas that I just got, and that worked really well. This is what they look like. There are various pieces, various angles on this end, but you can get up in there and move stuff and position stuff around. Then you can get under. This is a knife, but you can get under and lift the end, get a little bit of a shim in there. I hot melt glued in to where I could, just to hold the shim from moving around, and then I touched in the side where it steps up for the back. So at this point now, this will cure out real quick. I'll go in and I'll just trim it lightly with right here with an X-Acto knife or something of that nature to get her. There we go. To get her cut up. I got a variety of blades, I guess, thin and thick, just so that I can slice around it and clean it up, and then start dressing up the mold and plug it to get it ready to make the mold. So it's going quite well. It's going quite well. So now, I know you guys probably say, well, I need more action, less explanation, but it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things where when I work, I think, oh, what should I do next? Okay, so in the last segment, I said that I would hot melt glue those and then cut them out, and I'm going to do it that way. But then I got to thinking, what is this? How well is this surface relative to this surface, in terms of flattening it out? And so what I did is I just took some 40 grit, just put it on a Durablock. In this case, it's a attach it, not a stick it. Okay, and I just blocked all the way around, as much as I could until I got a flat surface. If like in here, you can see a little shadow line, and that's where this dishes and comes back up. But as I blocked all the way around, I just wanted to get it flat, and I see it's very easily, this is 40 grit, so it very easily rolls off the texture in that. But at this point, I'm just trying to establish a flat surface, and then I'll put some Evercoat on. Now, just skim coat this whole thing. No, it's not going to stick too well to the hot melt glue and all that stuff, but who cares? At this point, this thing isn't going 100,000 miles. This is going a couple of days at the most. So I'm going to try to establish everything outside of the form, just everything outside of the form with Evercoat, and just basically skim coat it. You have to probably finger it in a few areas, which makes sanding a little harder. But take and just try to get it all flat up to this area here. Okay, and then at that point, I'll block it maybe down to 80 grit or something like that, and then I'll start to work on this area and work myself into the center. The more I think about this piece of waste that winds up getting cut out, probably what I'll do after I get it all blocked out, when I come to, I don't think I'm going to come in here and try to finger sand that flat. That's just useless because it's waste. It gets cut out. I'll probably just put some 2-inch tape in it, 1.5 or 2-inch tape, something like that, and then carefully cut it out with an X-Acto knife so it just takes that shape. And then when I spray when I finish it off and spray the whole thing with Partol, a release agent, that tape, as you've seen in my prior videos, using tape underneath fiberglass is just wonderful. It just comes off with the either with the it either stays here and fiberglass comes off it, or it releases from there. It stays on the fiberglass. You can just peel it right off. And although you get the impression of the tape, you know, the texture, if there is any on the tape, telegraphing through, again, this is a waste piece. So whether I do that in all these areas, I don't know. I mean, these wound up turning out pretty good. The seam is so tight that or the opening is so tight that any of the smallest amount of seepage just is going to feather off the sandpaper. At this point, I'm trying to get it the shape as perfect as possible, so that I can establish a good mold, and knowing that I'm going to probably need to work a little on the mold just to get it dialed in. So the other thing is nothing here has a negative draft or a concave surface. I mean, this will be bridged all the way around like this, so that as you lay it up, as I lay up the mold or lay up the part, there will be a shelf in there, and this mold will be continuous in this case. So you'll be able to lay up, this will be one mold. This plug will establish one mold. Of course, I will cover this and block this out too, you know, just make sure everything is good sharp corners and no absorption or anything like that of the resin. So at this point, I'm going to do body work. From my experience and the fact that I watch YouTube too, body work is the most boring to watch, but it's tenuous and tedious, and as a result, it takes time. So I'll get back at you when I get that first segment of the body work put together. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, first layer or application on. Still a little hard. Got some chunks to clean out. I just didn't want to, you know, when I run them down with my finger, I like the surface here, so I'm going to leave that. But now I'll block it all out. I'll sharpen this up, and then I'll start sanding into this area here. So it is starting to look like a plug. You can see where, you know, I pulled back and I left material in here. I will carefully cut these here, but when I get to the kind of the gel state of the mud where I'm not going to interrupt everything that I want, I'm only going to interrupt the things that I don't want. So we'll just keep plugging away. Okay, that was first coat. Now, get in there, meticulously sand that. But now I'm hitting the wood in a few spots, so I know I'm just a few thou away. That's all just 40 grit, okay? That's all just 40 grit. So, of course, once I come back at 80 grit, I'm hitting here and here and here, so I may have to fill there. But I'll hit it with 80 grit after I get this all dressed out, and then come back and see what I need to do. I may just wait and just use some whatever you call that stuff. Dang it. Um, let's just go over there. I may just use some polyester glazing putty. Depending on, it looks like they're going to get pretty small. So I'll probably just use glazing putty if I just got a few scars and stuff on there. And then get her out of there. Got a lot of work to do to straighten this out. This was where there were chips and stuff in the wood. But I'll get that all straightened out. And, it's going well. Of course, then I'll build my barriers around it. But you can see that it's much easier to sand when you don't have a bunch of obstructions in the way. So. Okay, blocked out through 80 grit now. And so now I want to come in and I want to make sure that, I've got an edge here. I take a straight edge, whether it be, one of them or just, that's what I was using. And I set it on there and I look and see, does this come in contact and what am I doing? Lay it across here. And this is really good. I mean, both these sides turned out spectacular. But you can see where I'm not even touching the plastic down in here. So we'll have to build that a little bit. And that's where one of the screws is, of course, and it deforms it a little bit. Around here a little bit and around here. And you can see where I'm not touching down in there. So I'll get around now. I'll get around this. And as I'm blocking, of course, I'm taking down the texture at the same time. Just because that's what happens when you sand on textured vinyl or whatever you want to call it, plastic if you want to call it plastic. And so I'll just keep on doing that. I cleaned up the insides. They cleaned up really nice. With the hot melt glue, I just, in this case, just went around and lifted it and then slowly sliced around. And, again, as we're building out the mold, it's gonna work out really nice. It blocked down. You can see the hint of the screw heads stopped. Here I blocked until it started getting right to the plastic. You can see the outline plastic. So everything it looks really good. So now I'm just going to finish up these pieces. Just finish that up and block that down with 80. I might hit it with 120 or something like that. And then I'm going to throw on some, right here. Some speed coat. And it's just a surfacer. I'm going to throw that on there. I don't know if it's going to react with that, what it's going to do. I'm not concerned about it. I know you can aerosol or single part spray this. I mean, they make vinyl spray for crying out loud, aerosol based vinyl spray. But I'll use that primer surfacer and I'll lay it down on here. so that I can block it out. At that point, I should pretty much be to a mold. Once I do that, then I can again wet sand the thing out, get it nice and smooth. If I have scars or marks in there, then I'll come back in the surfacer. Then I'll come back and fix those. Whether I need to spray another coat of surfacer on, I don't know. It's not super significant at the plug stage. What's significant is to have a flat, smooth surface. If I have a few cut throughs, we're not talking about metal. We're talking about a disposable piece. So, but I want to get it so that that the impression that it makes on the mold is as good as it possibly can be. So this is going actually better than I thought it would. I didn't think the memory in the vinyl door skin would flatten to the degree that it did. It would give me the level of accuracy in terms of blocking it out that it wound up giving. So this is actually working very, very well for me. You can see, you know, where there's deformation because there's screws. And again, if you remember back, I was trying to place the screws in the same spots on both sides. So whatever I did as you build out on it, it starts to tell you a story, right? Like in this case, it pulled down, so this must have had a little more curve going that way. But I'm seeing that similar event in terms of where the filler is going in on both sides, and that it's undercut down in here and undercut down in there as I'm blocking it. You can see here that I'm just at the cusp of the vinyl, and here I'm not. But it's blocked out, right? I'm hitting the vinyl here. I'm hitting the vinyl here. They're not identical, but they're in the same zip code on the part that tells me that, you know, as I place the screws and where the vinyl had flexed, that I'm where I need to be, and that the similarity between the two will be extremely high. So again, I'll keep plugging away at it and get her into surfacer. Okay, I put a dust coat down and then my first coat, and you can see from the light lines, it's looking really good. Just kind of rocking around here. It's starting to dry back, of course, but I'm doing this actually a second time because my battery on my mic went dead. But this is just a surfacer, right? But I mean, you always want to kind of take a look at what you're looking forward to and make a mental note of what you need to keep working on. So you can see the transitions in these areas. They go up to the radius, and like this example, that's Bondo transitioning to the plastic, and then the plastic has a considerable amount of texture on it as it's absorbing that because it was scratched with 80 grit. But I'm just going to keep on piling on the surfacer, right? Let it get good and flat. You dry back flat, dry back to where this area is, you know. Try to get her to dry back as much as possible, and then apply another coat and just keep going until I can bury most of that. If I can't bury it at all, well, so what? Then I'll have to do a little more work on it. But it is starting to dry back. It is starting to, the shape is looking great. The symmetry is looking spectacular on them. So we'll just keep going after it and bury them down and wet sand them out. It does look like I'll probably have to, because some of the gaps, that gap there, now that it's all sanded and blown off in that, and right there, not very big, you know, a few thousandths, but I'll probably want to wipe that with caulking or something like that before I lay down the fiberglass, because it'll if it weeps under there, it will be hard to pull out of the mold. It'll break out, but I was thinking that would weep fine, but if it weeps horizontally and then down, in these it can't, I guess, but in either regard, I'm going to make it as easy as possible to remove from the mold, because there's no time in going around and cleaning that stuff up. You see, I did nail on just 1.25 inches. I'm a little more proud than this. That's about 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 above the surface. This is 1/4 inch above the surface. So, great. Now I can get a continuous shape out of it and get my mold made. Okay, I just finished burying it as much as I was comfortable doing. There's still some pinholes and, texture, but that's, par for the course. I'm spraying over plastic that I sanded. So when I get to blocking this out, you can see that, it actually filled into there, which is cool because for a little bit, but not everywhere, right? So I got a couple of spots that I'll need to seal up, but it looks good. You see that little effect right there, but I think that'll block out of this one looks really good. It just kind of flows right into it, and that gives you the shape really well on the light line right there. See that? That is really nice. Same with that one. Just right here I see I've got a blocking opportunity right in there, but I got enough material on it that I think I can sand it down. I may have to coat it again, but I mean, as far as today is concerned on this event, this has got to sit and cure now. So, I suppose in thinking about the number of coats, a dust coat and then one fairly dry coat, the second one was wetter, the third one was probably the one where I went across it entirely and then started concentrating in the middle. Then the fourth one, I went this way and concentrated it in the middle, and then I just wasted the rest of the gun on it. You can call it the fifth one, but I just wasted it in this area, and that's what you're looking at right now, where the wet area is. So just building, so everything here is, your standard run-of-the-mill 2 to 3 coats, and then just building it up into a crown here, so when I come to block it out, I have plenty of material to kind of, if you will, slope. I mean, we're talking thousandths of an inch, but we're getting into that area where we can make it look good. I'm happy with it, completely happy with it, because now this will hold, the surfacer, once cured, will hold most of that material together, and then I can go in and dress up what we would call on a bodywork pinholes, but I mean, in this case it'll hold that vinyl plastic in place while I work it over. So, all right, a lot of work, and it wasn't that bad. It's the morning now. It's 7 in the morning, and it worked out really well. I gotta do a little more sanding right here, but I just figured I'd stop. A little more sanding right here, but this blocked out really nice. Both of them blocked out really nice. So remember that little, I don't remember which side it was on, but that bubble, it might have been on this side. That was just where it was flowing out and curing. But everything blocked out. I, of course, have a few, areas that I'll sand a little bit, but if not, I'll have to clean them up a different way. Like I was talking about in the earlier video. But I'm very happy with it. I think I can actually just come in when I fill these cracks and just finger in the spots where they came through. I did where the holes or the low areas are. I did touch the plastic. I'm touching the plastic, in here, in the back here. In the back here, I'm starting to cut through here. So the most important thing is that, you know, I'm just trying to assure myself that it's not too fat, you know, which would wind up being, well, this will be what the finished piece looks like, but I just want to make sure it's not too fat so that it doesn't look proper on the handle. We've got probably a pretty good range because it sets in, you know, and the handle sits behind it, but, or the back side of the handle sits in behind it, but it's still, it's good to be as accurate as you can. So it really turned out nice, and I will clean that up, finish cleaning it up, and then hit the whole thing with some 600 grit, part all, and fiberglass, or well, gel coat and then fiberglass, and start making the mold.